Good morning.
Yeah.
My name is Martin Estrada. I'm the United States Attorney based in Los Angeles. We're here today gathered with our law enforcement partners to announce federal charges involving an individual who acted as an operative for the North Korean government in our country. We are charging a criminal scheme involving this individual and officials with the North Korean government. This criminal scheme involved obtaining in our country military supplies and high-grade technology and then sending those materials illegally to North Korea. The person that we've charged is an individual named Shenghua Wen. He was arrested this morning. We allege that he conspired with government officials in North Korea to obtain military supplies, including firearms and ammunition, to obtain technology, and then conceal that technology and those materials in shipping containers that departed from the port of Long Beach, and then ship those materials on to North Korea. All of this was illegal. Let me provide you some background. As many of you know, North Korea is a country that has been deemed to be hostile to the interests of the United States. Therefore, North Korea has been subject to sanctions and restrictions. Under US law and executive orders that have been in place for years, it is illegal for North Korea to obtain certain high-grade technology and certain military supplies without approval of the US government. That means that in light of the extraordinary threat that North Korea poses to our national interests and to our foreign policy, in order for certain materials, including military supplies, to be sent to North Korea, there must be approval from the US government. Without such approval, sending those materials to North Korea is a violation of law and a criminal offense. But, as alleged in the criminal complaint we are announcing today, North Korea engaged in a scheme to circumvent and evade those restrictions. Key to this scheme and central to this plot was the individual we arrested today, Shenghua Wen. Mr. Wen was working on behalf of the North Korean government to ship prohibited items on to North Korea. Let me give you a little background of Mr. Wen. Mr. Wen is a Chinese national. He came to this country in 2012 on a student visa. He overstayed that visa and thus was illegally in this country. I note that because given that he was illegally in this country, he was not permitted to possess either firearms or ammunition. Based on our investigation, we've learned the following about this plot. Before leaving China, Mr. Wen met with officials with the North Korean government. He met with them at North Korean consulates in the People's Republic of China. The North Korean officials sought to have Mr. Wen obtain military supplies and high-grade technology in the United States and send it to North Korea. Once Mr. Wen came to this country, the North Korean officials reached out to him. They used encrypted communication platforms to communicate with Mr. Wen. They asked him to obtain specific items, including firearms and ammunition. The North Korean officials sent Mr. Wen at least $2 million to pay for obtaining these materials and also to pay for the shipping costs. In order to carry out the scheme and obtain these illegal materials, illegal to ship to North Korea, Mr. Wen bought a business. It was called Super Armory. It was a federal firearms licensee, and he paid $150,000 for it. It was licensed in the state of Texas. The money to pay for this business came from the North Korean officials. Mr. Wen would obtain firearms and ammunition through this business, but also through others who he would pay to obtain the firearms. These are known as straw purchasers. He would then take these materials, often from the state of Texas, drive them over to California before taking them to the ports and shipping them. He would ship these materials by concealing them. For instance, we know he shipped at least 2 different shipments in 2023, and one of these shipments was labeled a refrigerator. Another was labeled as camera parts. But we now know they actually contained materials that were illegal to ship to North Korea, including firearms ammunition, and high-grade technology. When we caught Mr. Wen, we found that he was actually planning to send much more to North Korea. In a search of his home, including a van parked outside of his home, we found over 50,000 rounds of ammunition, which Mr. Wen admitted he was planning to send to North Korea. We also found pieces of high-grade technology in his home that he was also planning to send to North Korea. This included a chemical threat identification device and a device for detecting hidden listening devices. You see to my right here images of some of those devices, some of the technology he was intending to send. Among the images we found on his phone that he had sent or was planning to send was an object you'll see there. It looks like a sphere. It is actually a thermal imaging system. It is meant to be attached to aircraft and can be used for reconnaissance or target identification. Obviously, items that our government does not want in the hands of the North Korean military or government. We also found other items that Mr. Wen was asked to provide to the North Koreans. He had been asked to provide engines, plane engines, that the North Koreans could then use to help develop their military drone program. And North Korean officials also asked Mr. Wen to obtain military uniforms. And they told him that the idea with these military uniforms was to help in conducting a surprise attack on South Korea. We've charged Mr. Wen with the following federal crime: conspiracy to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This federal crime carries a potential sentence of 20 years in a federal prison. I will note the investigation is ongoing and additional charges may be filed. I will also note that as a charged defendant, Mr. Wen is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Let me conclude. The conduct alleged in this complaint is chilling. One of our foreign adversaries, North Korea, was running an operative in our country and using that operative to obtain high-grade technology and military equipment, including firearms and ammunition. And the purpose of this, allegedly, was to help conduct an attack on one of our allies, South Korea. Protecting our national security goes to the core of our mission at the U.S. Attorney's Office. It is a key priority. And in order to carry out this priority, it's essential we keep sensitive materials, including military equipment, outside the hands of our adversaries, where they can harm us or our allies. I want to give gratitude to the law enforcement agents involved in this. If not for their work, the situation here could have been much worse. There's no telling what additional damage Mr. Wen could have committed if not for the intervention of law enforcement. Our law enforcement officers and agents risk their lives and sacrifice each and every day to keep us safe. This is just another example of how law enforcement are on the front lines, sacrificing each and every day to keep our community safe. Let me thank the agencies that were involved in this impressive investigation and this arrest. First, FBI Los Angeles, which led our efforts in this case. I also want to thank Homeland Security Investigations for their work in this investigation, Defense Criminal Investigative Service for their work on this investigation. I also want to thank ATF and the Department of Commerce, Bureau of Industry and Security based in Los Angeles, and of course, our partners at Main Justice, the National Security Division. I also want to thank the prosecutor who led our investigation and our prosecution of this case, Assistant United States Attorney Sarah Gerdes. With that, I will now welcome to the podium Assistant Director in Charge of the FBI, Akil Davis.
Good morning. My name is Akil Davis. I'm the Assistant Director in Charge of the FBI's Los Angeles Field Office. Today, agents arrested Mr. Wen without incident at his home in Ontario. He'll appear in court later this afternoon. As noted in the complaint charging Mr. Wen, agents located military-grade technology in Wen's home and 50,000 rounds of ammunition. As you can see on display here today, photos of evidence are on display, as well as additional items that Mr. Wen successfully procured. Many of these items are described in detail in the criminal complaint, which we made available to you. I'm proud of the hard work that went into building this case against Mr. Wen by dedicated agents and analysts. The FBI and many of our federal partners here today specialize in cases that involve illegal export to foreign adversaries who attempt to evade sanctions and utilize weapons and technology for nefarious purposes. The significance of this arrest and discovery of this scheme cannot be overstated. Not only did the investigative team prevent additional restricted items from going to the North Korean regime, but they gathered valuable intelligence for the United States and all of our allies. This case is a success for the United States and no doubt dealt a significant blow to the North Korean government. Our investigation is continuing. Thank you for your time today. And I'd like to now introduce Special Agent in Charge of Homeland Security Investigations, Shawn Gibson.
Thank you, Akil. Good morning. My name is Shawn Gibson, and I'm the Special Agent in Charge for Homeland Security Investigations, also known as HSI, just south of here in San Diego. Today, we are here to highlight the critical work that went into this joint investigation. A collaborative effort between the United States Attorney's Office, HSI, FBI, DCIS, Commerce, and the ATF to prevent dangerous technologies and weapons from falling into the wrong hands. From the onset of this investigation in 2023, investigators have worked tirelessly, using a range of advanced investigative techniques and leveraging the collective expertise of the agencies represented here. This coordinated effort is what ultimately led to the defendant's arrest and the search warrants executed today. As detailed in the criminal complaint, the defendant is accused of violating federal law by obtaining firearms, ammunition, export-controlled technology, and knowingly smuggling these to North Korea. Through a joint investigation, we uncovered that the defendant and his co-conspirators mislabeled these shipments to conceal their identity to get them from Long Beach through Hong Kong and ultimately to North Korea. The consequences of these actions cannot be overstated. When technology and sensitive items fall into the wrong hands, especially those of hostile nations, the risks to global security are profound. Preventing these threats is a mission that HSI and its partners takes incredibly seriously. And it's the core of the work we do to safeguard our nation and its allies. None of this would have been possible without the dedication and expertise of the attorneys, agents, analysts, and support staff of the agencies involved. Each organization played a critical role in this investigation and brought unique capabilities that strengthen the overall case. As I often say, when law enforcement agencies work together, our impact is far greater than the sum of our parts. The collaboration between the U.S. Attorney's Office, HSI, the FBI, DCIS, Commerce, and ATF was crucial to the success of this operation. This investigation highlights the importance of the vigilance and cooperation in preventing sensitive technologies and weapons from being misused in ways that threaten our global stability. Thank you to all of our partners for what they do daily to keep America safe. And I will now turn it over to Bryan Denny from DCIS.
Thank you, Shawn. As stated, my name is Bryan Denny. I'm the Special Agent in Charge of the Defense Criminal Investigative Service here on the West Coast. As the previous speakers alluded to in their comments, as well as references to the complaint, this is an extremely serious matter impacting our national security amongst many other potential violations. To date, it has been an extremely collaborative effort, and it's bringing us some success, and it's a constructive step moving forward to finding out more about what Mr. Wen has been doing and how far his particular scheme reaches. As alluded, we've already discussed the North Korea connection, which is a primary concern, and we will continue to work with our partners in every way possible to bring this to a successful conclusion for the American public. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to Special Agent Charge Gregory Dunlap of the Department of Commerce.
Good morning. My name is Greg Dunlap, and I'm the Special Agent in charge for the Office of Export Enforcement, Los Angeles Field Office. Today's action demonstrates how the Bureau of Industry and Security, working with our law enforcement partners, prioritizes enforcement action against nation states like North Korea that seek to misuse U.S. technology to modernize its military programs and destabilize regional stability. BIS, FBI, HSI, DCIS, ATF agents and analysts, together with prosecutors, were able to uncover a sophisticated scheme by which Mr. Wen, a Chinese national illegally residing in the United States and taking direction from North Korean government officials, concealed firearms and ammunition in shipping containers and routed them through Hong Kong to obfuscate the ultimate end users in DPRK in violation of U.S. export controls. Our joint investigation then was able to prevent Wen from illegally exporting other U.S. technology, as shown in the pictures to the right, that could support North Korea's military, preventing broader harm to U.S. national security interests. Today's criminal complaint should send a signal to adversaries around the globe. BIS, working with our interagency partners, will hold violators of U.S. export controls accountable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now address any questions from the press. Yes.
Hi, do we know where he was a student? Was he actually attending a university or a program?
So we know he came in on a student visa in 2012. We don't know whether that was legitimate or not, whether he was actually studying or not. We do know that he was able to, during the course of his time in this country, develop and fine-tune a very sophisticated scheme for obtaining the military supplies and high-grade technology, for concealing those items in shipping containers, and ultimately getting them to North Korea.
And I saw in the complaint that in 2018 he was told to leave, in 2021 he was arrested, and he essentially signed a paper saying, like, I know I shouldn't be here. How was he able to stay here all this time, especially after that arrest?
So I don't know the particulars of how he was able to stay here, but I know he was here illegally, so he shouldn't have been here. But as you can see from the scheme, as we allege in the complaint, he was a sophisticated individual, and he was able to develop a very sophisticated scheme, evade law enforcement for some time. I do think it's important to highlight that law enforcement was able to intervene and stop him. What we found at his home, the 50,000 rounds of ammunition, the high-grade technology, is very concerning. Those are items we don't want to see in the hands of our adversaries, the North Koreans. So law enforcement really deserves to be commended for their work here.
So was he operating for 12 years, or did he just kick this into operation in the past few years? Or?
So we can't say how long he was operating this. The investigation continues. We do know he was responsible for at least 2 shipments last year. Firearms and ammunition. One he concealed as a refrigerator, the other he concealed as camera parts. But the investigation is certainly developing, and we want to learn how long he was doing this and how much material he ultimately sent to the North Koreans. Yes?
Who were you tipped off to?
So we learned about this through information, tips that were provided to the FBI, to law enforcement. There were multiple tips, including some individuals who he tried to purchase items from that tipped off law enforcement. Of course, we're very grateful for that information. When people see things that are suspicious, they should report it to law enforcement. This is a perfect example of the community reporting issues to law enforcement and law enforcement taking action. Yes?
Can you go into more detail on the 2021 arrest, such as where it happened?
I cannot. I don't have the details on that. Yes?
Was there any concern that the weapons then went on to Russia, as we saw North Korea recently sent soldiers there in Ukraine?
So what I can say is we're very concerned about the conduct that we charge in this complaint. Conduct of sending military supplies, including firearms, high-grade technology, ammunition, to North Korea. From there, when it got to North Korea, there's no telling what it could have been used for. Although, as we mentioned in the complaint, Mr. Wen was told that there was this idea of an attack on South Korea. Yes?
Was this an isolated individual, or are you guys continuing to investigate to see if this was a part of a broader network of individuals here?
This will be a broad investigation. We certainly know this individual was involved, Mr. Wen. We will continue to investigate to uncover every aspect of this scheme. We know there were North Korean officials involved, and if there are other individuals involved in this country, we want to discover that and hold them accountable.
In the complaint, he had told interviewers that he believed North Korea had essentially chosen him for this because he was, quote, good at smuggling. Do we have any record of him smuggling before and doing that here in the US prior to 2012?
So we don't have a record of him having smuggled in China where he was before 2012, although we have the information that you referenced. He was selected by the North Koreans. He met with the North Koreans on several instances. They certainly had enough confidence and faith in him to send him $2 million over the course of the scheme in order to obtain the materials and ship them to North Korea. Yes, sir.
Since he's the suspect is a Chinese national, is the government of China possibly involved in this as well?
So I won't speculate on other governments' involvement. I can just tell you what we've learned through the investigation, and that is that the North Korean government orchestrated the scheme, worked with this individual who was a Chinese national, had him come to this country, and had him engage in this conduct, which, as I said, is very concerning. Yes?
Oh, for me?
Yes.
Just hours ago, we know that South Korea declared that emergency martial law. Does this have any sort of connection to that, or is it just kind of coincidence it's on the same day?
There's no connection between what's going on in South Korea and the allegations we've made today. The arrest did happen today, and we're uncovering the complaint today. Thank you very much.